Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Melissa Siegel and I'm a professor of migration studies, and this is a channel about all things migration. So welcome back if you are a regular viewer, and nice to see you if you are new. So today we are going to be continuing with our country series with a focus today on the Netherlands. So the Netherlands is actually the country that I live in, even though I was not born here and I'm also not currently a citizen. So I'm originally from the United States. But today we're going to talk about migration trends in the Netherlands. And if you are interested to understand more about the history of migration in the Netherlands or the history of migration policy in the Netherlands, please check out these other videos that I have done on the same subject if you want to know more about the Dutch situation. So now let's get right to it. So what does migration in the Netherlands look like today? So first of all, I'll show you this first graph looking at net migration in the Netherlands from back as early as the 1900s to 2018. And what you can see is obviously that especially since the 1970s, migration has been growing quite a lot to the Netherlands. So people both come to the Netherlands, so you have lots of immigrants in the Netherlands, but you have many also Dutch people in other parts of the world as emigrants. And so this figure here is showing the net migration rate. So the number of immigrants minus the number of emigrants, for instance. And you can see that in general, the Netherlands is an immigrant receiving country. So even though it has plenty of immigrants, it is often considered more as an immigrant country. So now let's take a closer look at this. So here is some data from UNDESA from 2019, specifically looking at the top 10 migrant stock countries in the Netherlands. And what does that mean? Well, currently, or at least in 2019, there were around 2.3 million immigrants in the country. And this is in a country that has a population of a bit more than 17 million, just so that you have an idea of what that means. Now, let's look at the top countries where migrants are coming from that are based in the Netherlands. So the top country that you can see here is Turkey, followed by Suriname, Morocco, Poland, Indonesia, Germany, China, the Syrian Republic, Curacao, and the Russian Federation, and then of course a host of many other countries that are people that are being hosted here in the Netherlands. So, of course, what's interesting is these are both Western and non-Western countries. We have countries also like Poland and Germany that are European Union countries that are also represented here in the top 10 of stocks of immigrants in the Netherlands. Now, let's look at the flip side. So let's look at the stock of Dutch migrants in other countries. And this is actually, there are almost 1 million Dutch people that are residing in other countries currently. So you'll see here that the first countries are Germany and Belgium, which makes sense. They're both countries neighboring the Netherlands, but also the United States of America, Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, Spain, France, South Africa, Turkey, and then many other countries. So what you'll notice from this is, one, that you have a lot of Dutch people residing in other European countries and also countries that are neighboring to the Netherlands, but also that the majority of migrants to other countries in the world are also migrating to developed countries, to other developed countries. But it's often a common misconception in many immigration receiving countries that they're only immigrant receiving and not immigrant sending. And I think it's really important to understand that a country like the Netherlands, as well as many other countries, is both. Even though more people are coming to the country than leaving the country, a substantial number of people are also leaving the country to go live somewhere else. Now let's just take a snapshot of the Netherlands and the UK. So let's look at British citizens. What is quite interesting is that you've had plenty of migration both to the UK of Dutch people and from the UK to the Netherlands. What you do see, though, is that there was a substantial shift since Brexit. So this is when the majority of British people voted to leave the European Union around mid-2016. And you can see that there's been a dramatic shift then in the migration patterns. So what you've seen is actually fewer Dutch people residing in the UK and more British people moving to the Netherlands, which has been a very interesting development. Now let's also look more at migration background, just let's say in the last 10 years. So what you'll see in this graph here from Statistics Netherlands, or the Central Bureau of Statistics here in the Netherlands, is a graph showing the background of migrants. So first of all, this red line shows first generation migrants. So those are people who were born in other countries. That would also be, for instance, like myself. Then the next one is a kind of green line here, and this is for second generation migrants. And what does that mean? That means that at least one parent was born abroad. So that could mean that one parent was born in the Netherlands, but at least one parent was born abroad. Then if you look at the purple line, this is also second generation immigrants, and these are people who were born in the Netherlands, but both parents were born abroad. So you actually see a similar number of both first generation and second generation people in the Netherlands. So there's a term first and second generation. So migration scholars in general consider first generation migrants those who were born abroad and moved to a country, in this case the Netherlands. And second generation is always someone who was born in the country, so in the Netherlands, but their parents are from another country. All right, so that's generally the difference in first and second generation migrants that is used in migration studies. Now, where do migrants live in the Netherlands? It's interesting because migrants are generally concentrated more in cities and more in urban areas. So as of January 2018, 23% of the population of the Netherlands had a migration background. So that meant, first or second generation. And that percentage was larger in cities. Just over half of the residents in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague have a migration background. So you also see that the largest cities in the Netherlands also have the largest concentration of first and second generation migrants. You also have some other cities in the Netherlands like Almere, Amstelveen, Diemen, Vals, Utrecht, and others that have between a third and half of residents with a migrant background. And all of the residents of the Netherlands who have a Surinamese of all of the residents of the Netherlands who have a Surinamese or Moroccan background, just under half live in one of four of the largest cities. And the same is for Turks and people from the Antilles. That is just a little bit over a third. So just for a point of comparison, only 9% of people with a native Dutch background live in one of these cities. So you can see there's much higher concentration of people with an immigrant background in the larger cities. Now let's look at population growth in the Netherlands, because most of the population growth in the Netherlands to date has actually been because of migration. So here on this figure, which also comes from Statistics Netherlands, you can see that the major population growth in 2018 came from migration. We only had around 15,000 additional people from kind of natural population growth and around 87,000 from net migration. So that's taking into account both people leaving and people entering the Netherlands. Now, what's also interesting to look at is the reason that people have migrated to the Netherlands. And here in this graph, again from the CBS, we can look at this specifically for European citizens. So the European citizens that are living here in the Netherlands, what are the reasons that they moved here, or at least what are the reasons that they have registered as moving here? And what you can see is that nowadays the majority of people are here for labor reasons or for family reasons. But labor is really one of the major reasons why immigrants from other European countries are here in the Netherlands, followed by family reasons. And then also education. So the Netherlands is also an educational hub, especially for people who are wanting to study in English, for instance. It is an alternative to the UK. And then the orange bar here shows other reasons for migrating that are not labor reasons, family, or education. Now let's look at the same and look at reasons for migration, but for people coming from outside of the European countries. So here you can see a more kind of diverse picture. The blue shows labor migrants that are specifically in a knowledge migrant category. So this is a specified, more highly skilled category. The green, or the darker green, shows family reunification, but the lighter green shows family formation. So these are both family reasons for migration. Then you also have the darker blue color here that is for other labor migration, that is not this specifically very highly skilled migration. And of course you have the purple that is still education, so moving for education, and then orange, which is other, which could also be things like asylum seekers and refugees. So, oh, sorry, no, I take that back. So what you can see is that I missed the more purple color, sorry, the fuchsia purplish red color are asylum seekers. So you can see also, especially in 2014, 15, 16, and 17, when there was a larger wave of asylum seekers to Europe, that this also made up a larger proportion of the migration motives to the Netherlands in this period. So we saw a larger group of refugees during this period. Education has been playing more and more of a role also, as well as labor migration, but you see also that family migration has stayed quite strong also over time. Now let's look at first-time asylum applicants, since we know that particularly in the last few years, asylum migrants have been quite an important flow to the Netherlands. Let's look at the main countries that have been sending asylum seekers to the Netherlands. I think there's no surprise here on many of these countries. So the Syrian Arab Republic, so Syria has been the #1 country for a few years now. We also have Nigerians, people from Algeria, Turkey, Iran, Morocco, Moldova, Yemen, Iraq, and others. Now, just because someone puts in asylum application does not mean that they receive refugee status, but these are the people who have been putting in asylum applications, at least in 2019 and 2020. Now, also let's turn to some of the current migration debates or debates around migration in the Netherlands. I don't want to get too much into this. I don't want this to also be a talk too much about politics, but I think it is important to understand some of the discussions that are going on nowadays in the Netherlands. So one of those is obviously population growth that is being fueled to a large extent by migration. So really, since 2015, the population growth in the Netherlands has been mainly due to immigration. And now 23% of the Dutch population have some kind of migration background. So there is some discussion around, should there be more migration? Should there be less migration? There's definitely a discussion around the selectivity of migration. We're also seeing increased diversity and high population density, especially in cities, and cities and municipalities are responsible for providing integration services. So there are plenty of discussions around the integration of migrants. It is definitely widely and officially recognized that attracting highly skilled workers is important to the Dutch economy, and highly skilled migrants are more accepted in general than low-skilled migrants by the general population and policy. However, even though the Netherlands is known as a country that is very tolerant to Dutch language, that many Dutch people speak English well, that much of the higher education is in English, and that has also attracted a lot of education migrants and others to the Netherlands, which has helped the education sector prosper as well as other parts of the Dutch economy. There are also fears over the decline of Dutch language in favor of English, and so there are definitely some debates around that at the moment. Additionally, we have seen some periods rise in also right-wing populism, which has also influenced debates around immigration in the last 2 decades. Far-right parties generally employ kind of anti-Islamic rhetoric and are against new immigrants from countries that are predominantly Muslim. And however, of course, there's been some pushback on this, but we have seen a trend in this area. But what is very clear has to do with integration, and there has been a greater emphasis on becoming Dutch within integration policy and putting more pressure and more emphasis on the responsibility of the immigrant to integrate. Now, if we look at dual citizenship, there have also been discussions around whether or not there should be dual citizenship. And the Netherlands has had dual citizenship in the past, but currently for most situations does not. And there's, of course, always discussions around whether or not it's okay to have dual citizenship. Are there divided loyalties? Since 2003, immigrants can naturalize after 5 years of legal residence, or 3 if they're married to a Dutch citizen. But they must also take a test, both a language and Dutch knowledge test, and have no serious criminal record. In general, dual citizenship is not allowed, but there are some exceptions. For instance, if you're not able to revoke or give up your current citizenship, like in the case of Moroccans, or if you marry a Dutch citizen. So there are some loopholes for allowing dual citizenship. Actually, dual citizenship in the Netherlands was allowed from 1992 to 1997, but then it was withdrawn. But of course, now with Brexit, with the UK leaving the European Union and many Dutch people residing in the UK and many British citizens residing in the Netherlands, this has also renewed the debate around whether or not dual citizenship should be allowed. Now, I hope that just gave you a quick glimpse into the current migration situation in the Netherlands. Of course, there's much, much more that could be said, and many of my migration scholars colleagues here in the Netherlands have written a lot about this, and please do check them out. If this video was helpful for you, please like, subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell so that you don't miss any of the other videos. Please check out the other videos in the series on the Netherlands if you're particularly interested in the Dutch migration situation. And I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.